I'm Dr. Joey Fawcett, and welcome to this month's Work Positive Culture live experience. I hope you're having a good Wednesday. At least that's, if you're watching the recording, that's when we went live with this. And you're always welcome to join us live. It does create a more dynamic environment. I know that takes time, energy, and attention. So I am very humbled and honored by that gift. Absolutely delighted for you to join the Work Positive community as we create positive work cultures that grow people and profits. Because here in the Work Positive community, we understand that growing people and profits are the same thing. I want to give a special welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time. Every single month we have persons joining us for the first time. And so I always want to make you feel welcome. And we depend on our regulars, our familiar friends to come on and join us. So thanks so much for that. If you are a first timer, here's something you may not know unless a friend told you, right? Be sure to stay until the end when I'm going to give you 2 free gifts. This month, we are examining the challenge. Yes, hello there to those of you dropping comments in. I appreciate you. Good to see you this morning. If anytime you want to drop a comment in, feel free. I'll prompt you a few times through here today. If you want to drop in the city where you are or something like that. I know that's what a lot of people do. We just assume everyone lives in the Work Positive community that's here, right? So zip codes are irrelevant. Each month we take on a special human capital, human resources, people leader challenge, and it tends to be around the same topic that month's book is about. We publish here at Work Positive Today a little book each month. And once again, this month, thank you to all of you in the Work Positive community. This month's book is our 15th in a row that has hit number 1 in 3 different Amazon categories. So we are very, very grateful for that. We'll tell you more about how you can get your free copy at the end. We're going to talk today about the challenge of creating what I like to refer to as a continuous learning positive work culture. That is a work positive culture where learning is expected. It's expected to happen and it's expected to continue. So this month's bestseller, the title for that little book, and therefore the title for our Work Positive Live experience today is Leader Soul, Grow a Root to Fruit Culture. Leader Soul, Grow a Root to Fruit Culture. Now, just in complete transparency, I really hesitated to put the word soul in the title of this little book, this bestseller, and today's live experience. Why? Well, it just suggests so many varied meanings. I mean, like I realize I may be older than some of you. I'm a product of the 60s and 70s. But for me, when you say soul music comes to my mind. And I had so many amazing experiences as a school-aged kid, particularly during racial integration back in the 60s. Soul music, if you will, unified all of us diverse 5th graders right on through high school. And so I absolutely loved that. Another varied meaning of soul is soul food. Got to be honest with you, I'm a thin guy thanks to genetics, but soul food is my comfort food jam. So you'd think I'd be a lot bigger than I am, right? I mean, if you put a plate of fried chicken and collard greens and homemade mac and cheese and fried okra and fried cornbread, you hear the fried thing there in this Southern accent, right? Yep. Also put a thick sliced pound cake in front of me. That's my happy place. Soul food is my comfort food jam. And then, of course, also when you hear the word soul, there are religious undertones there. So I hesitated for all those reasons and so many more to title today's live experience as well as this month's bestseller, Leader Soul. I hesitated because I just didn't know how you'd receive soul, but I did it anyway. And here's why I did it anyway, okay? There are lots of reasons, but primarily my reason is because the successful people leaders of today that I know are working beyond the traditional myopia of technical skills. They understand that the people they lead are much more than their skill sets. And these successful people leaders are leading from a core essential that I call the soul of work. So the purpose of this live experience today is for you to grow your own leader soul and then to grow the people you lead from what I call the soul of work. For decades, we've been told that leadership is about three things: systems, strategies, and structures. So if you just build the right processes, if you just implement the right programs, then culture will take care of itself. So how's that working out for you today? Not so much? Okay. What we've produced by having that trifold focus exclusively, and it's really wrapped up in that myopia of technical skills. What we find today is that leaders' souls are shriveled up and barren and dead at the root. And the soul of work is right there with it. But I've learned something from coaching executives over 40 plus years and helping transform cultures, and also interviewing hundreds of leaders on the Work Positive podcast. Here's what I've learned. The organizations that are growing today are not starting with systems. They are starting with souls. That is, the people. Gallup's 2024 State of the Global Workplace Report, of course, you've heard it, about 21% of employees worldwide are actually engaged, which means roughly 3 out of 4 people on any given team are among the ranks of what I like to refer to as the working dead. It's costing the global economy an estimated, so it's probably more than this by now, $8.9 trillion in lost productivity annually. Yep, that's trillion with a T. That sounds soulless to me. But look, take heart. There is hope. The solution is not complicated. It's not about you hiring me or some other expensive consultant or doing some massive restructuring. It's about you leading with soul right where you're planted today. And what does that mean? It means you do the internal work that creates the external transformation. So during this hour together, you're going to discover some insights from my 40 plus years of experience and wisdom, plus that of 7 extraordinary leaders who've done this work themselves and have helped countless others do the same. So let's give some definition. I love metaphors, as you know. Let's give some definition to leader soul. What is leader soul? So I want you to imagine your leader soul as a fruit tree. Now, pick your favorite fruit. It really doesn't matter. So just pick your favorite one. Is it apple, peach, pear, cherry, orange, or whatever? In fact, right now, go ahead and drop in the comments what your favorite fruit is that grows on a tree. Is it apple? I bet that's a one that everybody loves. Pear, peach, cherry. What is your fruit tree to grow on? Okay, getting some there. Peach. Peaches are good if you're from Georgia, right? Apples, that's the most common one. So first, let's look at the root. That is, leader soul is an inside job. So we're thinking about your leader soul as fruit tree, and we're beginning at the bottom. We're beginning with the roots. I interviewed Allison Jones on the Work Positive podcast. Allison has spent her career discovering what makes leaders effective over the long haul. She's the founder of Practical Inspiration Publishing and host of the Extraordinary Business Book Club podcast. She's talked with hundreds of authors and thought leaders about what really works in terms of a culture. And let's let Allison describe it in her own words as we talk about and think about leader soul as a fruit tree, and as it beginning with root and leader soul as an inside job. So let's listen to Allison describe it in her own words.
I liken it to, if you have an orange tree, it is an orange tree at its roots. It is not going to produce the fruit of apples. So you can try to staple apples onto that tree and call it an apple tree, but they're going to rot and fall off if it's not coming from the roots. And it's the same thing often with leadership. We try to learn new behaviors, communicate more effectively, learn better conflict resolution skills, all of these types of things, active listening. But if it's not coming from the root structure, they're going to be short-lived, they're going to rot, and they're going to fall off.
In other words, as Allison's saying, so much of our attention focuses on leader behaviors. That is what we do, what we say, how we make decisions. But look, those behaviors are fruit. So it's almost like we're starting with the end. Now, of course, you want to start with the end in mind, as Dr. Covey taught us, but you're starting with the end product. If the roots are lacking proper nutrition or they're the wrong DNA, oranges and apples, the fruit can't grow properly, is what Allison is saying, no matter how good it might look on the surface. So I want you to think of the roots of your leader soul, of leadership, as the essential beliefs and values, assumptions, even the wounds that shape how you show up in the world. Healthy roots grow authentic and sustainable behaviors, but first you pay attention to the roots. Anything less than paying attention to the roots, and leaders just aren't going to produce healthy fruit. And their teams can always tell the difference. Christian Muntean is someone I interviewed on the Work Positive podcast. He learned this very lesson, that when the roots, the leaders, the executive team are unhealthy, so the team will be. He was contacted by a Fortune 500 company. They were experiencing what leadership described as a behavior problem. So employees across the organization weren't living the company's stated values, was the presenting symptom. Now, the typical response, and your company may be no different, the typical response is just to roll out another training program. We're assuming that it's a knowledge gap. People just don't know how to act. Maybe we'll add some accountability measures. But instead of doing that, Christians started asking questions. So let's listen to Christian Muntean describe the kind of questions that he was asking.
So I was invited I was called by a Fortune 500 company to help them. They said, we've got this behavior. They didn't describe the behavior, but it's a problem throughout the entire company, 30,000 employees. And we need your help. Or we need somebody's help. They were trying to decide if they wanted to work with me. And I said, well, if this is a problem throughout your company, does this also behavior show up on your executive team? They said, oh, yeah. I said, okay, does it also show up on the board? And they said, yes. I says, here's the deal. I could offer you a proposal where I bring in a team and we do mass trainings across 30. I mean, that would be a gold mine for somebody in my space.
Sure.
But really, we need to work with the executive team and the board. And if they're willing to change this behavior, that will create a downstream effect that will address most of it. Then we can just do some cleanup around it. And they didn't want to do that. They said, there's no way that they're going to go for it. I was like, well, then you can't create change. You're going to just force people to go through trainings they don't want to go through.
It sounds like your place. So the executive team is the root. The organization-wide behavior problem was the fruit. And until those executives did their own inner work, you can run every gee whiz bang training program in the world through there. It's just not going to make a lasting difference. Their leader's soul was rotten to the core, literally. I know. It's much easier to believe that culture problems like these are caused by those people. Man, we love demonizing others. We can talk about the disengaged employees. We can talk about the resistant middle managers. People my age, especially men, white men, like to blame the entitled Gen Z team members. Man, that does nothing to improve the root system of your leader's soul. Chester Elton, of whom I'm a fanboy, co-author of a great book I recommend to you, Anxiety at Work. I regard Chester as one of the most respected voices in organizational culture. He asked leaders a question that really cuts through to this root. And here's the question. Am I being the leader I want to be right now? Am I being the leader I want to be right now? Not am I hitting my numbers, not am I doing what the job description says, not am I meeting shareholder expectations, but am I at this moment showing up with my team as a leader that I aspire to be? That question, my friend, shifts the focus from those external metrics that play the blame game to an internal reality. That's a question about roots, not fruits. So as we do every month here on the Work Positive Live experience, let me give you a challenge. And this is your root challenge. I refer to these as do one thing challenges. So here's your root challenge. For the next week, starting today, pause 3 times during your workday. I like to do it morning, midday, and evening. And ask yourself Chester's question. Am I being the leader I want to be right now? Now, that's going to give you a response. So you know that response. Am I being the leader I want to be right now? So whatever response you get, I want you to reflect on that response. Look at three things. One, what situations support my best leader soul? In other words, when you say, yes, I'm being the leader I want to be right now, look around you and see what's happening in the context that's prompting and supporting you being your best leader soul at that moment. Conversely, if you say, no, man, I suck right now. My root system is so bad. I'm just unhealthy. Look around you at the context of situations and see what's triggering your worst leader's soul. Because it's an internal process, but we allow ourselves to be so influenced by the culture around us that we internalize it oftentimes. So the best gets supported, the worst gets triggered. Then this third question is an amazing executive coaching reflective question. So much wisdom comes out of this. How can I work from more of those best situations? In other words, how can you set yourself up for success? How can you put yourself there? Now, it may be physically tired, you didn't get in bed, you didn't get enough sleep, you didn't rest well, you didn't get peaceful in your consciousness and subconsciousness before you went to sleep, so you just didn't rest well. I mean, there's a myriad of influencing factors here. But how can I work from more of those best situations? So you put yourself in a position for success right there, right? Just think about these three questions as producing data points about your root system that's feeding your leader's soul. Okay. Great question to ask yourself now. And of course, I like to use the 1 to 10 scale, 1 being the least, 10 being the best. So where's your leader's soul roots right now? If you want to drop one of those numbers, 1 to 10 in the comments, be glad for you to do that. If you're feeling really transparent this morning, go ahead and do that now. So we move on from the root up to the trunk of your fruit tree now. So we move on to the power of seeing and being seen. The reality is your root system exists for more than itself in the matter of leader soul. You don't live just for yourself. You as a people leader live to influence others. So the vibrant growth of your root system actually pushes up a sprout through the soil. Now, as I've told you before, I live on a little 20 farm, so we're all about growing things here, and we're very much nature-based and organic in our approach to understanding these. And frankly, that's where the root fruit metaphor came from here for talking about your leader soul. So what happens is you plant the seed, the roots develop first, and then the roots push up a sprout. That sprout sticks its head up above the soil to see what the conditions are like around it. When it's favorable conditions, that sprout grows on up and out and eventually becomes what we think of as the trunk of the fruit tree. That trunk is what carries nutrients from the root system with a goal of further growth. And we'll talk about that further growth in a few minutes. I want you to think about your leader's soul as like that sprout. Your impact first sees the growing conditions in the work culture. Are they favorable or are they adverse? Obviously, if they're adverse, that sprout will die. If they're favorable, they're going to continue. But you as a people leader have an amazing opportunity to influence the growing conditions, make them favorable, and nurture a root fruit work positive culture. Your influence primarily as a trunk here, remember you're first sticking your head up above the soil, so this is the first time you're seen. Your influence to create favorable conditions for others to grow from the soul of their work depends on your seeing and being seen as the trunk. So it's that I see you, you see me, I see you seeing me triad that we've talked about for generations now. Let me give you a good example of this, and it's a rather personal example. My wife and I have been married for 43 years. I know it's incredible to believe that any woman would remain in a relationship, a marriage relationship with me for 43 years, right? I know, it blows me away too. It's absolutely incredible. When much earlier in our 43 years, frankly, it's probably around year 1 or 2, I was a much braver man then. So I asked my wife this question because, man, my wife is so brilliant and so beautiful. So I looked at her and I said, honey, that's what I've called her for 43 years. Honey, why me? Why would you, as a brilliant, beautiful woman, choose me? You see what I mean about being a brave man? Because after a year or 2, she may be questioning that decision. In fact, there was an awkward silence when I asked that question. And I'm thinking maybe she regrets making that decision because she thought for a moment, long enough for me to squirm and wonder if she questioned her choice. Then, though, of course she didn't, because she's still with me today, right? Then she said this, and I will leave this world remembering her response. Here are her exact words. You saw me when I was invisible. Now, I could give you, we could spend the rest of this live experience together with me giving you time after time after time how easy it was for me to see her. I had no idea at that time, as I was 19 when we first met, I had no idea that she felt invisible. Okay. I just knew that she filled up everything I could see. And she was all I thought about. She was all I saw. She became the focus of my reality. You saw me when I was invisible. I've thought about that so many times. Let me ask you this. What does it mean to see someone when they feel invisible? And here's what I want you to reflect on for a moment. Just be honest, just in your own solitude and thoughts. How many people in and out of work do you look through or around or past daily? I know that's a hard question. These are people like, let me just give you a list of them here. These are people like the custodian that cleans the office building. These are people like the barista who prepares your coffee every morning at your favorite coffee shop. The attendant who may be at the door as you enter the workplace. The Uber driver who maybe takes you there. A junior partner who is so easy to dismiss. An executive assistant, a presenter. I mean, these people that you just look right through, right? Which of these people is most challenging for you to see? And I'm just asking you to be honestly transparent about your struggle. Understand that these are gifted human beings worthy of your notice and your paying attention to. Let me ask you a question. What if the key to growing your work culture hides in plain sight? Take the free Work Positive Culture Assessment to discover it. Get insights in less than 4 minutes that transform your culture so you grow people and profits. You just answer 13 simple questions and discover your culture stage, strengths, and personalized next steps. Get your free aha culture moment at workpositive.today. Go to workpositive.today right now. People leaders understand the value of seeing and being seen when they have well-rooted souls. And that's the trunk of the root to fruit leader soul tree. Now, when you see these people, you're not just looking at their performance. You're not just looking at their potential value to the organization. You're literally seeing them as complete human beings with their stories, their struggles, their hopes, and their fears. I had the pleasure of interviewing Roger Gerard for the Work Positive podcast. He's the former chief learning officer for Cardinal Health. He wrote a book called Lead with Purpose. Roger refers to this leader soul trunk activity as go and see, go and do leadership. That is, your leader soul literally walks the trunk to physically be present with your people instead of managing solely from behind a desk or a dashboard alone. I love what Roger told me on the Work Positive podcast about this. Let's listen to Roger in his own words describe this go and see, go and do leadership.
The culture lives in the minds and hearts of the people doing the daily work. It's not the stuff on the wall. It's not the plaques and the accolades and the rewards. It's the minds and hearts of people coming to work every day with intention, with the desire to do something that matters, that matters to them and matters to the people that they're to serve. If you've been in human resources for any length of time in the healthcare industry and you're interviewing nurses and doctors and technicians and other specialists, the first thing they're going to tell you when you ask them what they want to do in their career with your organization, I want to help people. I went into this profession because I want to do something good for people. That's what they tell you.
Sounds rather obvious, right? But I just want you to think about your own behavior and activity as an expression of your leader soul. And we're thinking about that trunk function now. How much time do you spend with the people? So let's contrast a bit here. How many hours do you spend in an average week in meetings about your team versus with your team? How often do you walk the floor? Do you sit in on frontline work? Do you just have unstructured conversations with people at all levels in the organization? What Roger's recognizing here is the vitality of seeing and being seen and how that requires direct human contact. Now, I know in a Marco Polo culture and distributed work environment, that's more challenging. But when you go and see, or as you get as close to even virtually going and seeing, you just pick up on things that reports won't capture. You notice body language, you notice hesitations, you see enthusiasm or the absence of it. You see the actual culture, not the hoped for culture. So let me give you your trunk, do one thing, your dot challenge around your trunk. I want to encourage you to this week, write 3 handwritten notes to team members, not emails, not Slack messages. I want you to get physical note cards and thank them, even if you have to mail them if you're in a distributed environment. Thank them for something specific they've contributed. You can acknowledge a personal quality that you admire of theirs. You can express gratitude for who they are. And I want you to pay attention to a couple of things. One, pay attention to how you experience writing that physically on a note card. And then I want you to notice how your recipients respond. It's a simple practice, but it begins transforming your current culture to a root to fruit work positive culture, one person at a time. And that's how you see and are seen, is one person at a time. So congratulations on feeding your leader soul root system so well that your trunk's grown tall enough for you to see the people you lead better and to be seen by them as well. Now let's extend your leader soul influence further. Trunks grow, roots grow trunks grow branches. And I want you to think about branches as the core essentials of your culture that reach for the sky, especially in a root fruit culture, right? And as you extend your branches from your main trunk, you're doing a couple things. You're expanding your reach for others, and that reach allows you to shade and protect them from some of the adversities. It also is an opportunity for your branch to fall and crash on them. So which are you doing more of? Core essentials, as I like to call them, core values, perhaps you call them, grow your leader soul branches. Now, understand the winds of adversity are going to blow against your branches daily. Even a slight breeze moves the branches in a fruit tree, and those branches either sway and paradoxically strengthen, or if they stiffen up, they weaken because they're so stiff against the wind. Your response to the adverse winds in your work culture display your core essentials. Now understand that your team members want to stretch their branches as well. They want to grow in the direction and will grow in the direction of the core essentials that you exhibit daily. So just as leaves grow from branches and photosynthesize in the sunlight, so your employees value the light of your leadership and they grow towards you and that light. They long to be led, in fact, toward the light of your core essentials. They know that work takes on meaning beyond products and services when it's a work positive light. Now, every organization has values, and yet much of the time, if not most of the time, the values mean so little to, if anything, to anyone. We just heard Roger Gerard talking about that, right? Are they on the wall only? I mean, if you really want to have a truthful exercise in your work culture, go ask your employees, what are our core essentials? What are our core values? Some of them, at least based on my experience, are just going to shrug. And especially when you ask them how those values shape the day-to-day decisions. So it's almost like the core values exist as aspirations instead of realities. And that's like a fruit tree that has a trunk but no branches. And so the soul of work cannot perpetuate itself because there's nothing to photosynthesize there. Christian Muntean, as I mentioned a moment ago, was just such a wonderful interview on the Work Positive podcast. He said that values only become real when they're translated into specific observable behaviors. That is, words like integrity and excellence have just been eroded due to overuse and by marketing departments, frankly, that they've become vague. They can mean almost anything to anyone. If a value can mean anything, it can mean nothing. At least that's what it means, if it means anything. So let me give you a twofold solution right here. First of all, replace core values as a phrase with core essentials. Values is so overworked now. I think it's lost its work culture relevance. I know it has, just due to the overuse. Essentials, core essentials, sets up really a mental framework with an expectation that you're going to do this. It's essential, right? So it's a core essential, so we're going to do it. So first of all, replace core values with core essentials. Secondly, instead of stopping at an abstract word like integrity, ask the question, what does this look like in practice? What would I observe if someone doing this worked from this essential? And what would I observe if they violated it? Christian shared a powerful example from a client, an automotive dealership in Anchorage, who translated from core values to core essentials and focused on behavior. So let's listen to Christian as he describes this most excellent experience.
I'm going to bring up one more point about this too. It was a dealership group, but they owned one of their dealerships, one of the brands that they owned, which was a Subaru brand. Because of this culture process, they became the highest performing. This is in Anchorage, Alaska. They became the highest performing dealership within North America.
Within all of North America?
Yeah.
Wow.
Enough so that Subaru sent up a documentary crew to do a documentary about them and show the rest of the dealerships how to do this. So this is not just feel-good stuff. If you do it right and you translate it to behavior, it will translate to your bottom line.
Wow. Did you hear that? I'd love to go to Anchorage, just visit that Subaru dealership, wouldn't you? Yeah, that's amazing. So here's your do one thing branches challenge. Name one core essential of your company. I'm not asking you to name all of them. You could have 3 or 4 or have 22. I don't know. Just name one of them. Then write down 5 specific behaviors that you'd observe in someone working from that core essential. I know that's going to take a minute. So if you're with us live, just make a notation about this or come back and watch the recording. If you're watching the recording, just pause it right here. Write down 5 specific behaviors of that one core essential that you would observe in someone working from that core essential. Secondly, write down 3 behaviors that are a violation. Because remember, if it stands for everything, it stands for nothing, right? So you got to know what it looks like when you violate it as well. Your core essentials drive the branches of your behavior to reach for the sky, achieving more work positive accomplishments than you've ever dreamed possible for you and your teams. And what's happening here is your leader soul is pushing from your root system up through the trunk, these branches. Now, what grows on the branches? Remember, we're talking about a fruit tree. When the branches thrive so vibrantly out of these core essentials, they burst forth because it's a fruit tree with flowers. So let's talk about flowers that grow from your leader soul fruit tree. Flowers literally grow right along the leaves on the branches of a fruit tree, and the flowers are the precursors to fruit. I wish I could walk you outside of my office here so you can see the blueberry bushes that we've got out here. There are a few flowers, just due to some cold snaps we've had lately. There are a few flowers still on one of those blueberry bushes, but most of those flowers have turned into fruit. So the flowers are the precursors to the fruit. Now, the challenge for flower production is that, as we've experienced here, an early or a late frost can freeze and kill those flowers. And when that happens, there's no fruit to harvest. That's just like your leader's soul and the culture of your work, right? It gets cold just due to the vagaries of doing business today. I mean, political machinations, news reports, the economy, what have you, all these external influences surround you in the climate in which you do business today. And sometimes it gets really cold, and that cold can try to kill your culture. It's at these very moments that you reach back down into your root system as a leader. Remember, the internal work that produces the external transformation. And you pull nutrition up through your main trunk and into the branches to those flowers. Now, I like to think about that reaching back into your root system, up through your trunk, down the branches, into the flowers, is giving yourself permission to shudder and feel that cold, and even to fail in the midst of it so that you can later on flower. Your culture either supports or kills the flowering of your employees. So my friend Robin White came on the Work Positive podcast, and she shared with us this framework around that permission. She calls them 3 permissions. And I want you to think about these 3 permissions, because everybody's climate and culture gets cold from time to time. I want you to think of these 3 permissions as helping you warm up the air in the culture around you to protect the flowering of your workers. If you've ever been around an orange grove during cool seasons of the year, even vineyards during cool seasons of the year, they put what they call smelt pots in the orange groves and the vineyards. And these smelt pots are fire that literally warm up the air around the orange trees and around the grapevines in order to protect those flowers and to protect that fruit. And my good friend Robin White came on the Work Positive podcast in her own episode, and she talked about 3 permissions that guide your leader's soul to cultivate what we're describing here as a thriving root to fruit culture. So the first permission that Robin talked about was this permission to feel, to create that space for the full range of human experiences in the work culture. That is the good, the bad, and the ugly. Your team overexerts their energy when they feel like they have to hide how they feel. And that's energy that could go to work. In other words, if there's emotional honesty, or if there's an encouragement for emotional dishonesty, then you just can't say my kid was sick all night, so I didn't get any sleep, right? And yet that's the reality of it. So let's listen to Robin White describe this permission to feel in a flowering work culture.
The way I endured it was, okay, so I'm not permitted to speak, but I am permitted to write. And it kind of tuned me into what other permissions, how does permission show up, and how does, I tend to be contrary in nature. So you tell me not to do something, I want to do something. I had to pause my coaching work as well, because it's hard to coach in silence. It gave me time to spend a lot of internal conversation around this concept. And I was noticing how it tied to some patterns that I saw in my client work. Almost every client came in with some sort of snag, almost. So I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach, but some sort of snag around their feelings. What I noticed was that I sometimes didn't permit myself to feel certain things. They were uncomfortable, and I had different ways of avoiding them, distracting or suppressing them, detaching from them. But it was in the permission to approach these feelings that I could actually learn from the feelings, that I could partner with my feelings instead of feeling overwhelmed, instead of feeling a victim. I could actually see the value in even the uncomfortable feeling.
I like when Robin says to partner with that feeling. What does that mean for us in the fruit tree metaphor here? The flowers on the branches of the fruit tree feel the cold. Your employees feel the cold, downturn in the economy, anything external that affects the culture. So as a people leader, leading from your soul, you just want to acknowledge the cold and its potential to damage the flowering culture. You just want to say, hey, it's cold in here, or things have changed in our culture, rather than expecting your team members to overexert themselves and use this energy to cover up. There's another permission Robin talked about in this flowering of a work positive culture from the leader's soul, and that's permission to fail. Now, there are a couple, we all look at failure in different ways, but this permission, as Robin describes it, really empowers a continuous learning culture like the one we're talking about from Leader's Soul today. It empowers innovation. It empowers growth. People play it safe when they fear failure. That is, they only do what they've always done because they know that's approved behavior. They agree even when they don't really, and they wait for problems to erupt into crises rather than naming them at their onset. Permission to fail, as we're going to hear Robin say, means treating mistakes as data rather than crimes, as opportunities to learn rather than causes for punishment. So let's listen to Robin describe this permission to fail dynamic of a flowering culture.
What happens if this conversation doesn't go well? This is, again, we're still in the conversation with yourself, right? Doing our own work here around this. If this doesn't go well, all right, well, let's look at it. What are the things, and in the book, I share a failure success analysis. You could work through that to give yourself insight into what are the behaviors, what are the words that I would be using that could make this go badly? And what are the words or the behaviors I could exhibit that could set this up for success? So that takes you into, where am I going to have this conversation? When am I going to have this conversation? What language do I need to use? And how do I communicate both of the important goals of maintaining relationship? And I'm assuming that that's the value we're still working in the same scenario, maintaining the relationship while still delivering this tough message. So it helps you kind of look at it. For all of you analytical thinkers out there, this is a beautiful exercise to do. And if you're like me and maybe analytical thinking isn't your forte, this is a nice discipline and a way to build those analytical muscles. To use this exercise, like I said, it's in the book, Failure Success Analysis, but you don't have to have formal training to do this. You can simply say, ask the questions. What do I need to set this up for success? What would I do that would make it a failure? And sometimes I think we avoid looking at this. This is that principle of approach. Sometimes we avoid looking at the things that would make it fail, but that's how we actually lean into strategy. That's how we honor our values and express our values.
You hear her describing data points, right? And what she's really doing there, permission to fail, means that you begin to consider the conditions that you can establish for the greatest likelihood of success. Thinking about it from a fruit tree perspective, I mentioned smelt pots a moment ago. Even when you bring those out in the orange grove or the vineyard, and you're trying to warm up the air around the flowers on the fruit tree, some of them are going to die. So the question becomes, what did you learn? Did you learn to get smelt pots out earlier, turn the heat up higher, to fan the warm air down to the lower branches, because that's where you lost all your fruit? What you're doing is you're discovering how to better protect the flowers during the next cold snap when you fail. Okay. And that's what you want to do with your employees as a people leader. You want to observe When were we most successful? When were we least successful? When do we fail? And how can we structure for more successful, in the case of Robin here, conversations around a leader's soul, work positive culture? Okay. So it's the permission to feel, the permission to fail. Robin's third permission is the permission to fly. I want you to think about this as the full flowering, despite the cold adversity of doing business today. When people have this permission to feel and fail, they become free to attempt ambitious things. So they're bringing their full creativity and energy. And let's listen to Robin describe this permission to fly in her own words.
And so if you want to extrapolate into the permission to fly, focus in on that success, not only what you could do to set it up for success, but what will success look like? Because and look at it from both hers, whoever you're having, so say it was you and me.
Okay.
What would it look like from both perspectives? What would success look like to this person?
Win-win.
Win-win, yes. And I love that not only are you talking about this is a one-on-one moment, but I heard you talking about as a team, as a culture, this
Right.
idea of permission to fail at a cultural level.
Yes.
It starts here though. It starts in these little one-on-one moments to
It does.
normalize it with the culture. So I love that you're pulling this all together, Dr. Joey, masterfully. But
You're
yeah,
very
you said
kind.
how can we make sure that this happens? How can this be this win-win? We've done the prep work, we've done the plan, but make sure you've got the vision of success and what that is for both of you. You could even, once you've done your internal work, start the meeting with, okay, I feel like this might be a little uncomfortable, but I want to make sure you walk away feeling like it was a success.
And just
And you can
declaring
say-
that from the start.
Just declare it and say, when you have to deal with something that's uncomfortable, what makes it successful? Because we all do, right? We all have moments or seasons of discomfort and challenge. But to get that perspective is what makes it a win, actually? What turns it around? What flips that script? And get clear on that so that you can support that, because they're going to walk away and they're going to continue to think about this conversation. Our brains, I know you love neuroscience, Dr. Joey, and our brains love to grab hold of the negative stuff. It codes anything negative as a threat and it wants to play it on loop in our brain. But when you start from the beginning and say, hey, what would be successful? And then you conclude by saying, hey, did we get there?
Right.
You're turning this from a difficult conversation into a formative coaching kind of conversation where you're saying, did we hit it? I know it was uncomfortable, but I want to make sure that we hit.
Here's your flowering do one thing challenge. Okay. Let's review Robin's 3 permissions. Okay. It's the permission to feel, fail, and fly. Okay. Which of those 3, and here's a great question for you, which of those 3 can your leader soul grow the most in? Just identify the one that your leader soul can grow the most in. And then I want to encourage you for the next few weeks, several weeks probably, focus intentionally on strengthening that permission. Talk to your team about it, ask for feed forward information, those data points on your leadership, which can warm that permission for you. And then your commitment to that, light up your root culture. Keep it visible, keep it consistent, not only for your benefit, but as a people leader so that your team can appreciate it too. And I want you to watch particularly what happens to trust as a result of your working on either feel, fail, or fly. And trust, I promise you, will go zoom, zoom, and your fruit tree will grow faster, taller, and produce more fruit. Okay, so we've begun with the root system, the internal work that produces the external transformation. That first peak above the soil is the trunk system. That's where you see and are seen. You produce those branches, which, right, put out the leaves. And then and they also produce not only leaves, but the flowers. Now, those flowers on a fruit tree, as I mentioned earlier about my blueberry bushes out here, those are the precursors to fruit. You protect the flowers in order to later harvest the fruit. your leader's soul receives a bountiful harvest of fruit as you do a couple of things. You cultivate to care and to create. Fruits cultivate a culture of care and creation. So this is the culmination of your leader's soul fruit, right? It's a crisp bite of an apple. It's the sweet juice of peach running down your chin. Oh man, I can't wait for that to come around. The sugary tart of a cherry squishing in your mouth. Peeling and smelling an orange. Man, I eat an orange every night. I love peeling some oranges and smelling those, right? Okay, your mouth's watering. I better continue on quickly here. Fruit ripens to the best deliciousness. In other words, the most sugars in the fruit when it's left on the branch long enough. What you typically buy in a grocery store today is picked early and then it's sprayed with ethylene to artificially ripen it so that it looks ripe, but it's not fully ripe. And why do I mention ethylene? Because you can spray your leader's soul with all kinds of hacks to make you appear ripe for a promotion, a title, a pay raise, more responsibility. But I'm promising you it's all show and no go when you use those hacks. You and I enjoy eating fruit that has stayed on the tree long enough to get fully ripe and to have as much sugar in it as possible. But I want you to understand something. The tree produces that fruit for another reason. Fruit carries seeds. Just think about the last apple you ate. It had seeds inside of it, right? Think of it as the next generation of apples. Peaches have pits. Cherries have pits. Oranges, most of the time, have seeds, unless you buy a special variety that's seedless, right? So this delicious tasting food has one purpose, and that's to carry the seeds so the next generation can come along. So the fruit is there to attract the birds, the bears, and the other animals who want to open up the seed case, that is the fruit, eat it, eat the seeds with it, and then the seeds find their way back into the soil through that bird or through that bear. Think about that for a minute. Okay, we'll keep going. It's a legacy move. It continues with great care and creation from that fruit. And that's the purpose of the fruit, the care and the creation. Leader's soul, when you're at your best, leading from your leader's soul, it must include the care for team members and the creation of legacy leaders, other leaders, to continue to cultivate this root fruit culture. So think about this for a minute. How well does your culture care for team members in the complexity of their work and lives? And what are you planting in identified employees to seed and grow the soul of their work? A culture that cares for team members and creates leaders from followers is the fruit of a work positive culture. And Jeff Gibbard came on the Work Positive podcast with me, and he referred to this kind of care and creation culture and people leaders in it as lovable leadership. And for Jeff, care is the foundation. Let's listen to Jeff describe it in his own words.
Care being one of the first things that you can do to create so just backing up real quick to the concept of lovable leadership. It's about the leader, but it's not about you want people to love you. It's about creating a culture of lovable leadership, which is about creating a culture of love, which is steeped in trust, respect, kindness, care, trust, safety. These are things that create environments where you feel love and connection, even if it's not, obviously it's work appropriate love, but it's the idea of feeling safe where you are and feeling cared for and feeling that you have trust and feeling that you're respected and there's kindness. These are the elements that make up love. And it's fully work appropriate to have those elements at work, right? Yeah. So care is, I think, one of the first ones, because so much of the time when we leave a job, so much of the reason we leave jobs in general, statistically year after year, is because of our managers. We leave bad leaders. When you treat your people as if their lives don't matter, that their worlds outside of the walls of your office don't matter, and that all that matters is the company, what the company needs, how are you going to inspire loyalty? How are you going to inspire trust? How are they going to love working there? They're not. They're just going to feel like they don't matter.
What Jeff's really saying here is that trust cares, and trust grows from that care. Care that serves only the company's interest is manipulation, but we're talking about a genuine care, or Jeff calls it lovable leadership. He also told me in that podcast that trust deposits are small, but withdrawals are large. In other words, it might take 100 small positive interactions to build trust, but one betrayal can wipe them all out. Some researchers suggest the ratio is about 5 positive to 1 negative. Some even say 10 to 1. And that math has huge implications. Building trust in this care and creation culture of the fruit requires consistent, sustained attention to small things. Here's the way Jeff described this reality.
If you want to limit the size of that withdrawal, you have to not try and cover it up and pretend that it didn't happen. You need to own it because that's actually a contribution back into the bank. You're saying, I screwed up. I'm sorry. Let me tell you what actions I'm going to take in order to rectify the harm that I've caused or the problems that I've caused. When you own up to it, you're showing that you're a person of integrity and people can continue to trust you. You just happen to mess up. And that's a difference because messing up isn't the problem. It's what's the context of the mess up. Is it that you've breached my trust in the mess up, or it's that you messed up, but you still kept my trust? I look at it as this way. A great leader, especially a lovable leader, will never accept credit for somebody else's work. And they will also never pass blame for their own shortcomings in leadership. Everything that happens on your watch, you own that. So even if somebody else messes up, that doesn't mean that they escape accountability for messing up. If somebody on your team messes up, you got to work on that. But it's on your watch. You're the leader. It's your job to make sure that you understand where the breakdown occurred. So you take ownership in that. And if it's something that you did that you screwed up, 100%, you got to immediately just own that. I messed up. Here's what happened. Let me tell you how I'm going to fix it. And and part of taking ownership is taking actions to rectify it and fix it.
Wow. Jeff has so much to say there. Let me give you your fruit, do one thing challenge. Just for the second time, we're going to move forward here a little bit faster. Your flower, do one thing challenge. First of all, I want you to think of these as soil samples of your leader's soul. And I want you to have a conversation with a team member about these. And this is the creation part. I see in you some leadership qualities that I value highly. What would it be like if we invested some time in cultivating your leader's soul? And then next, you want to say, what are some areas of interest that you'd like to begin offering this leadership? And then you want to cast a vision for them as a leader and say, what do you hope we accomplish over the next month by focusing on the inside work of your leader's soul development? So those are some fruit, some challenges around the fruit that we want you to think about. So I want you to cycle back to look at the entire leader soul root system growth. And I want you to think about a couple things. First, which stage are you proficient in, and which stage has the best opportunity for you to grow? Remember now, there's the root where leader soul is an inside job. There's a trunk that has the power of seeing and being seen. Core essentials are the branches that you reach for the sky, right? And then the flowers that are precursors to fruit, the permission to feel, fail, and fly. And then the fruits are actually that cultivating the culture of care and creation. Ask yourself which stage you're most proficient in. And then ask yourself, which stage do I have the best opportunity to grow? That's the one that you feel least proficient in. Okay. All right. And just use that to determine, back to Chester Elton's question, are you the kind of leader that you aspire to be? Now, to help you grow forward in your own root fruit culture creation, and look for 3 ways that you can most effectively leverage that proficiency to realize your opportunity. So to help you grow and move forward in creating a work positive root fruit culture, I want to give you a couple of gifts. The first one is, and if you want to drop a question or a comment into the comments section here, into the chat, that's fine. We'll get to them as we have time. But I want you to know that you can get the book, which was #1 in 3 different Amazon categories yesterday and today. The Leader Soul book is absolutely free for you on Amazon today. You can go get it right now. If you're watching the recording, I'm sorry. If you missed it, go there. It's relatively inexpensive, even when it goes back on and we charge for it. I think we only get like 99 cents for it. So we want as many people as possible to get this book. So go to Amazon, download the Kindle copy now. If you don't like to read on a Kindle or something, DM me on Instagram or message me on LinkedIn and just say, hey, Dr. J, send me a free digital copy of Leader Soul, and we'll be happy to do that for you. The other thing we want to offer you is an opportunity to assess where you are in your work positive culture journey. If you go to workpositive.today, our website, workpositive.today, you'll find an opportunity to download the Work Positive Culture Journey, and also the opportunity to do a free Work Positive Culture assessment, which you can do now, and it'll help you understand where you are in your own journey. So thanks again. We really, truly appreciate you giving your time and energy to this, whether you watch the recording or whether you've been with us live today. Thank you so much. Anything that we can do to help you, obviously we'll do that. We'll give you free books. We'll give you free assessments. And if you just want to have a conversation with me, reach out to me on LinkedIn or DM me on Instagram. We'll be happy to help you grow your leader soul and cultivate that root to fruit culture. Thank you so much for your time, energy, and attention today. We look forward to seeing you next month. I'm so grateful you joined our conversation about creating positive work cultures that grow people and profits. Connect with me directly on LinkedIn today. Just search for Dr. Joey Fawcett, or you can click the link in your show notes. When you send your connection request, mention you're a Work Positive Podcast listener, because I want to give you a free digital copy of my Work Positive Team Edition book. It's a $19.95 value, but I want to share it with you free because it contains practical strategies that I personally use with clients to transform toxic work environments into thriving cultures. We explore in that book how to create a positive work culture, and we do so again in every episode of this podcast. Our LinkedIn connection allows you and me to directly talk about your specific challenges, so feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn. I personally read and respond to all those messages because I genuinely care about your work positive success. So go to LinkedIn and let's connect. Remember to mention you're a podcast listener to receive your free Work Positive Team Edition book. I look forward to seeing you on our next episode of the Work Positive Podcast.